Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. The card that to a lot of people salvaged the weekend and delivered in more ways than one. More than anything we saw on Friday or Saturday, the top-ranked show on ESPN Plus that was comparatively less expensive than all the other stuff. All it really would have costed you was the cost of an ESPN Plus subscription, assuming that you have one. All-action shootouts from start to finish. I will address the Espinoza versus Vasquez fight in another video. We're going to focus on the main event here. We're going to focus on Inoue versus Cardenas. That turned out to be so much more, just so much more exciting than it looked on paper. Ramon Cardenas, the spirited challenger for Inoue's U.S. return that gave Inoue more than he bargained for, at least early on. At the start, Inoue's getting loose with him, exhibiting all the qualities you've come to expect from Inoue if you've been watching this fighter long enough, and then he gets caught with an overhand left. Another moment where you hold your breath, just like what we saw at the start of the Luis Nery fight. Inoue steps too far on the inside without his hands at home, and he gets caught with a left hook. Trying for punches and getting caught in between. Fight by fight, he is exhibiting a vulnerability to that particular punch. But just like in the Luis Nery fight, after he composed himself, because he didn't hop right back up after the knockdown, like a professional, he took his time to gather himself before he would rise to his feet, saying, "I was very surprised, but I was able to calmly put myself together. I made sure I didn't take that punch again." Even though Ramon was looking for it afterwards, looking to land that same peach of a left hand, Inoue tightened up. You start seeing jabs from Inoue. Lots of them. As a stout jab is very difficult to counter, especially when the guy's on the balls of his feet, moving in and out like Inoue was. Ramon looking for that same left hook, looking for that same punch, getting into exchanges with Inoue, but losing them. Because Inoue was a lot more accurate. Several unanswered jabs, landing successfully, backing off Ramon Cardenas, who was hanging tough and fighting back. Did a fantastic job of making a fight of it, and throughout a sense of danger that even though Inoue is piling it on and piling up the rounds and beating Ramon Cardenas, if another left hook gets in, could be in trouble again. That even though Ramon was losing the fight, there was a lot of steam on his punches in the exchange. You got the sense that anything could happen. Ramon wasn't backing down, but neither was Inoue. Where some other fighters get gun-shy after they get caught, after they get dropped, like Ryan Garcia did on Friday. Inoue once again showed us how a real fighter responds, a real champion, just like in the Luis Nery fight. After the knockdown, Inoue turned it up to score a knockdown of his own in the 7th round, piling on the damage, knocking down Ramon Cardenas in the corner. And even with that, Ramon didn't mentally check out. He was still fighting back as best as he could, even though he was losing. And in the 8th, when the fight was stopped, when it was waved off by referee Thomas Taylor, as he knew he piled on the punches and piled on the damage, Ramon's protests were genuine. He wanted to keep going, even though he was well on his way to getting knocked down again, knocked out perhaps. Some people are calling it an early stoppage, that they should have let the fight keep going. But between the knockdown in the 7th round and what I counted to be approximately 11 unanswered punches in the 8th, I think Thomas Taylor made the right decision.
It's just that the memory of that home run swing in the 2nd round was still fresh on everybody's minds, and they felt that if Ramon gets in with another one, he could knock him down again and turn the tide. I don't blame them, but at the same time, I don't blame Thomas Taylor for what he did. This guy was getting beat up round after round after round, not down.
Pounced on. Sometimes you gotta save the fighter from himself. And that's what Thomas Taylor did. That's what he's there for.
The third man in the ring.
Is it cause for concern that Inoue has once again been knocked down by the exact same punch that we saw in the Luis Nery fight? Is he starting to slip?
He's 32 years old.
It does seem to be an area of vulnerability for Inoue in the exchange because it happened the exact same way that it happened in the Luis Nery fight and around the same time, very early in the contest.
Now, this having happened for the 2nd time, I think Inoue and his team are going to work a bit harder moving forward to keep those hands at home. Do a better job of that.
Stay on your jab and stay on your toes, managing the distance, and don't fall in. Don't get too far on the inside where these guys can touch you.
That was the adjustment that Inoue made. He got on his toes and stayed on his jab, and a jab, especially a quick one, is hard to counter from a guy who's moving in and out.
Setting up other punches while he does it, I lost count of how many big right hands Inoue landed that staggered a very brave and a very durable Ramon Cardenas.
So many times he sent them careening into the ropes off of big right hands and a body shot here and there, going to work, going to town on the spirited challenger.
I'll tell you something, a lot of people didn't know nothing about Ramon Cardenas before, but they know a lot about him now, enough that I'd like to see this guy come back. I think this guy deserves another big opportunity. I could go for Cardenas versus Luis Nery at some time in the fall.
And Inoue?
Post-fight, he said that as long as he can continue to make the weight, he plans to stay at Super Bantam following his win over Ramon Cardenas, and he won't rush to move up to featherweight. So I suppose that tables any idea that he's going to move up there at the end of the year to fight Nick Ball.
He's already confirmed that he will be facing former unified champion MJ Akhmadaliev in September, and there were rumblings about a Nick Ball fight at the very end of the year, but with this,
I suppose that we can can that idea, at least momentarily. It really doesn't make sense for Inoue to rush up to 126 when so many of his contemporaries stand in one spot for a very long time. Consider that Javvante Davis moved up to 135.
what was only his 2nd weight.
5 years ago in 2019, and he's still there now. He's not campaigning at 140. He's not campaigning at 147. He's not campaigning at his 4th weight like Inoue is. So why should Inoue be in a rush to move up to a 5th?
David Benavidez sat at super middleweight for a decade before moving up to light heavyweight.
So why should Inoue be in a rush to move up to a 5th?
A 5th weight.
So whenever a high-profile fighter is involved, somebody in the conversation for being top 5 pound for pound in the sport, there are going to be boo-birds, there are going to be naysayers, there are going to be detractors. One that goes by the name Elijah Pierce, a featherweight.
Reacting to Inoue's 2nd round knockdown, he said, "Told y'all quit acting like he's invincible. Great fighter, but he's human, just like everybody else, and he loses at 126. Watch."
All that really is more shade from an American fighter who likely won't accomplish half of what Inoue has accomplished. Because for talking about how Inoue got knocked down in the 2nd round, buddy, you got knocked down by Artur Villanueva in the 2nd round last year.
What do you got, amnesia?
For worrying about when and where Inoue's gonna suffer his first professional loss, you've already lost twice. Once to Giovanni Cabrera, then again to Suleiman Sagawa, all before you've accomplished anything in the featherweight division or anywhere else.
Because you've never been a champion anywhere, let alone a champion at 4 weights and undisputed in 2, like this guy. So what are you so upset about? American fighters can't stand somebody else getting attention. They hate it.
Tell me that it's not hate when you're castigating him for getting knocked down when you've been knocked down.
Maybe Inoue does lose at 126. It's a possibility that I've often entertained myself, that this guy's too brave for his own good, and that may be too high a mountain to climb. But if the day comes that he loses at that weight, that's saying that this guy had to travel 5 divisions before somebody could beat him.
Where Elijah Pierce has already been beat by a couple of nobodies. So what's he piping up about? I saw another Twitter user that goes by the name Pound for Pound say, if this was Jaron Ennis getting dropped like this, the entire X app would have crashed. The boxing double standards are crazy.
Let's talk about double standards for a second.
Ahead of this weekend's fight, this same Twitter account said, I'm not buying the Inoue hype until he starts whooping ass at 126 and in America. F all that fighting in Japan shit. I want to see it on an even playing field. If he clears 126 out, I will give him full credit and crown him.
So you're saying you're not giving him credit already for being a 4-weight, 2-time undisputed champion?
But you're giving Jaron Ennis credit, full credit. Jaron Ennis, who's never fought on an even playing field as you described, he's never fought anywhere else but at home. He's never fought anywhere but America.
This guy's really high on Jaron Ennis, as you can tell.
And notice the double standards. It's perfectly okay for Jaron Ennis to fight at home, but I guess it's not okay for Inoue to do the same thing, even though the preeminent market at the lower weights is in Japan, not in America, but that's not okay. Not to this guy.
No, unless he's fighting in America, he's not fighting on an even playing field, as opposed to Boots, who is?
And notice that he's saying that he has to clear out a 5th division before he can give him any credit, where he's giving Boots full credit, who hasn't cleared out 147.
You don't give Inoue credit for the 4 divisions he's already been a champion in, but you give Boots full credit.
Who still hasn't cleared 147. Do you notice that he's setting the bar astronomically high for Inoue, but astronomically low for Jaron Ennis? And American exceptionalism has everything to do with it. Double standards.
People like this, without their double standards, would have no standards at all.
Going as far as questioning whether or not anti-doping testing is conducted in Japan because he, quote-unquote, doesn't trust them.
Oh, but you trust the American commissions and their revolving door policy on PED users. When Luis Neri got popped in Japan, he was dealt out a lengthy banment.
It lasted years, as opposed to the banments you see in America that only really last a couple of months. I mean, Ryan popped hot last year, and he came right back this one, like nothing happened.
Oh, we could be here all day talking about fighters that fought on American soil after testing positive for banned substances, and they weren't banned for very long.
None of them. I mean, Jarrell Miller got popped twice. Came right back each time. Oscar Valdez got popped ahead of the Robson Conceição fight, right here in America, and they still let him fight, and they even let him keep his belt.
They didn't do nothing. While you're so untrustworthy of the Japanese boxing commissions, they would have handled those situations a lot differently than the commissions here.
So let's stop beating around the bush. What you're insinuating is that Inoue is doping, a baseless accusation, when I can make that same kind of accusation about Boots. Why are we supposed to trust him?
American exceptionalism, your biases, your double standards, because Boots comes from the same crummy neighborhood as you?
That's usually what the school of thought is. Because you identify with Boots, you think he's supposed to be exempted from the same scrutiny you give everybody else.
Rules for thee, but not for me.
In a pig's eye, you're just a hypocrite, projecting your biases. You think people are biased towards Inoue? Hey buddy, I'm not Japanese.
But you tell me, what do you and Boots got in common that you're so high on him?
Jaron Ennis, who hasn't accomplished half of what Inoue has accomplished, but you're already sold. He hasn't accomplished a quarter of what Inoue has accomplished, but you're already high on him.
You're expecting Boots to clean out 147, 154, 160, 168, just because he said so, where here you have a fighter.
Inoue doesn't have to promise to become a champion at 4 weights because he's already done it. And you don't have to wait for him to unify all the titles because he's already done that. Not once, but twice. And he is promising to do it again at a 5th weight.
While Boots has yet to do it in his first. And Boots is the one you're high on.
And you want to talk about double standards? You have the audacity, the gall, to harp about double standards.
So ain't you got no situational awareness or something? I suppose it takes a certain level of IQ to understand how what you're saying looks in tandem with the criticisms you're making.
Because maybe what you don't realize is you sound like who you're criticizing, and you're just not smart enough to realize it. And it's better not to argue with individuals like these so much as study them and use them as an example.
Make examples out of them.
Here's another original thinker. A content creator right here on YouTube that goes by the name Champside, who said Inoue has a glass chin. I've been saying he's overrated and overhyped.
As opposed to Javvante Davis, who he's high on. Gee, I wonder what him and Javvante have in common.
Because this guy's very much high on Javvante Davis, who's not a 4-division champion like Inoue. He's never been undisputed. Hell, he's never even been unified. But Champside is sold on him already, whereas Inoue, he's overrated and overhyped for getting knocked down at his 4th weight by a left hook that was damaging, albeit dignified, as opposed to taking a knee like Javvante did because some soul glow got in his eye.
Then running to his corner, mid-fight, like a little bitch, so that his corner can towel him down.
Where Inoue was fighting a contender, a legitimate one, at a 4th weight, Javvante brought up a guy from the lower weights, from 130 up to 135, and you couldn't even finish him, like Inoue finished Cardenas and forced the stoppage. Javvante couldn't do that.
Inoue isn't sat at 122 bringing up guys from 118, like Javvante is sat at 135 bringing up guys from 130.
So let's call it what it is. Guys like Pound for Pound, and guys like Champside, because there are a lot of them, in reality they hate everyone. They hate everybody. They hate me, they hate you, they hate Inoue.
They hate the Japanese fighters, they hate the Latino fighters.
They don't like the Brits either. They don't really like them either. They hate everyone who isn't them. Comments like these, at least in their own minds, are intended to be a fight for equality.
Inoue's getting too much praise, he's getting too much credit, and in their own mind they feel that that credit should go to the fighters they identify with.
Even when those fighters are not as accomplished as Inoue. That's the only reason he's getting all those plaudits. They feel that the fighters they like, the fighters they identify with, shouldn't have to do all that stuff, but get the credit anyway. This is not a fight for equality, for things to be even across the board. This is a fight for partiality. This is a fight for partial treatment, preferential treatment.
The prejudices that they claim to be fighting against are the prejudices they harbor because they're prejudiced towards everyone that isn't them.
They're projecting. These are severely insecure individuals that live vicariously through boxers.
How are they insecure?
They're insecure because the very idea that a foreign fighter could be receiving this much praise and this many plaudits upsets them. No matter who the fighter is, it bothers them to their core.
No matter what the fighter does, and these brazen double standards you see in plain sight are the byproduct of a deep insecurity that requires constant validation even when it's not deserved.
Even when it isn't earned. One day, Inoue is going to lose. I've said that a million times myself, but if he does, it's not because he's overrated, it's not because he's overhyped, it's because he's not protected, like the pieces of shit you like. Your homoerotic fantasies of hanging out with a Javvante Davis so you can smell his cologne and marvel at his leg tattoos. Angry at us because we hold him to the same standard as we hold Inoue. The difference is an Inoue ticks off on all the boxes. A Javvante doesn't.
Boots still doesn't. Maybe he will one day.
But with an Inoue, we don't have to wait. So why would a Boots get the same credit as an Inoue? Is Boots a 4-weight champion?
Is Javvante?
Inoue's around the same age as Javvante, and he's at his 4th weight. So when can we expect to see Javvante at his? What's the ETA on him moving up to the welterweight division?
Let's see how well he does at his 4th weight. Since you're so critical of Inoue at his, let's see if Javvante don't get knocked down. See if he don't get knocked out. Since that's the standard you hold an Inoue to, that's the standard I'm gonna hold Javvante to.
Because you don't want equality. You want preferential treatment.
What am I, your mother?